The Amateur Television Net is on every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Catch up with the latest ATV news, see the latest television projects, shack layouts and much more. A good time to ask questions about amateur television. We use local 2-meter liaison frequency FM simplex 147.400 MHz and Berwick repeater 439.375 MHz. Every Tuesday starting 8 p.m.
Good evening, good morning and good afternoon wherever you may be watching this net this evening. And my name's Ian and my call sign is VK3 Quebec Lima, and I have the happy opportunity of running the net this evening. The net's on every Tuesday, Melbourne time, Tuesday at 8 o'clock. Melbourne local time. We're currently on daylight saving actually, and it's actually daylight outside with a bit of magic and pushing the right button, making sure that you can hear me. That is
your audio. I think we lost Ian as well. CH checking in with video while you're doing that.
One, two, three. We have audio. All right, that's the looking south. You might see a few penguins in between the buildings there if you look closely, very closely, and you'd have to have better eyesight than I have. Right, back to me. Sorry about loss of audio. The battery went. I've got a dodgy battery in one of my wireless mics, and I do use an external mic normally, but unfortunately has to be the power supply. External power supply has to be switched on. Not only plugged in, but switched on. So that's why it just fails after about 30 seconds. All right, thanks for the guys for letting me know. And this evening, let's see what's going to happen. We have Peter, VK3BFG is, I believe, going to talk. At least one of the topics will be about the new band plan, the WIA band plan, which is band plan, which has been released some couple of weeks ago now. It's my understanding, and there's a couple of weeks left, or might, something of that order, for comments and feedback on the plan. When it comes back to me, I'll actually show a slide that I'm just throwing together at the moment with a YouTube program which Hayden has posted, which explains which aims to explain the changes to the band plan. So that's coming up from my side. Also, we have on RTV1. There's two channels on RTV, channel 1 and channel 2. I'm currently on channel 2, and we'll switch to channel 1 with Peter, VK3BFG, and then Stephen, VK3TTF. And then Stephen, if you could at this stage pass it back to me in the absence of anyone else coming up on RTV1, and I'll take it from there. And we also have a couple of stations coming up on RTV2 in the second half, if you like. John, VK3RTV, and Mick, VK3CH. All right, so that's the plan. Subject to change, and any additions will be most welcome. So if there's anyone else who'd like to pop in, by all means, there is openings available as we speak. All right, what else was I going to say? I think that's about it. That'll do. So Peter, if you could stand by, what shall I do? I shall put up a slide which will direct people to RTV1 if I push the right button.
Thanks, Ian, and good evening, everyone. Thanks, Ian. Yeah, I can tell the audio is a little bit woofy, but I'm on the lapel mic, and there is a reason for it, as you will see shortly. Anyway, let's cut over to the first little bit. On the bench there still is the GT Media chassis, and Stephen 3TTF, I'm sure he's going to expand on this one, but he identified that this part of the receiver is not all that flash. And you might see there, Stephen, I've taken the infrared sender off it already, and you're quite right. The rest of it is working okay, and Stephen has provided some software so we can go directly off this this output here, which is the feed originally to the LEDs. And I've put some new LEDs on the front. We've got a power LED, and we've got a hole here, which I'll have the little infrared detector sitting in front of. And I've had a test of it. You'd be surprised just how wide you can go with that very small hole that's there, and the detector still works. And we've got a LED here that's going to show the key up situation, so we'll know when the receiver is active, and then two LEDs here that are going to be driven off some of Stephen's software. So that'll show channel 1 and then channel 2 as it's polling. So when I'm up at the repeater, I can make sure that the polling is occurring, and I can see keys up and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's really good. Anyway, the main thing tonight is just to have a look at the Wireless Institute of Australia band plan. And I did give you a heads up on this one a couple of weeks ago in terms of what is there, but I guess we can go to the graphic, and we should be able to do that. Let's hope the graphic comes up. It was there for a bit. Let's see what we've done there. There it is. Okay, what I've done is I've just snipped the relevant parts that are of interest to us as ATV operators. The whole lot is available on the Wireless Institute website, and the YouTube thing that was there is also good, but it's better to, I think, download the document and have a look at it yourself. Although Grant certainly, who's the chair of the Technical Advisory Committee, certainly does make some comments on that YouTube, which are valid. So anyway, let's have a look at the relevant parts that's really of interest to us. And the first part is the 6 metre band, and I have mentioned that before. And down here, you can see there's a section here, if you're following my little mouse, 52 to 52.5, which is experimental wideband, and with a bandwidth less than 500 kilohertz. So we can certainly do that in terms of the kinds of outputs we can put from ports down. So it's quite possible to operate in that band. There's a nice graphic that is associated with all of the band plans, which I think is an improvement on what was there. And of course, things have got much more complex than when the previous band plan was developed. Things have changed quite dramatically in terms of the kinds of activities that we're taking on these days with amateur radio. 70 centimetres, business as usual. Down the bottom here, we've still got the single channel that we're using for RTV, and people can use for point-to-point if they wish. And we have certainly done some narrowband experiments there on that frequency, dodging in between usage from RTV. So the band plan of greatest interest is the 23 centimetre one, and there's the proposed band plan. And keep in mind, all of the band plans are open for debate and feedback to the Technical Advisory Committee. You can do that directly via the website. You'll find there's a link there, and whatever things you might like to put back is quite welcome. That's what it's out for. So it's not indelible. There's been a fair bit of investigation in terms of what is actually there. The main issue here is Galileo. Not all that concerned with the other uses that might be there. So operations need to be mainly below 1260 megahertz. So we have two proposed DVB channels. Here they are here, DVB1 and DVB2, and really as far as activity on 23 centimetres is concerned, I think two channels is Roman, which is in 1274 to 1293. That's still an amateur frequency, and you can see there it's designated experimental. The question for us here really is whether we will continue to operate there. One argument might be that the chances of a point-to-point type operation, which is basically what we're doing, it's fairly remote that interference may occur. The counter argument there is that even though it might be unlikely, if it did occur, that would be a dramatic effect, and the boom would be loaded on us very severely, and we would be down to, I think, a 1-2 megahertz channel if if any interference does take place. So we probably need to migrate from there. Don't really know whether that's the option that people might think is reasonable. The problem we have as far as the repeater is concerned is if, for example, we allocated 1245 to stations east, that included the what was 1255 as well, and 1253 for stations west. In a way, that's perhaps a logical thing to do. The question that's in my mind there is, would a signal on 1245 desense the signals on 1253 or vice versa? The effect is more likely to be on the west than on the east, if that was the case. And maybe the community here might decide that they'll continue operating on above 1260. Probably not a good idea though. So where to go from here? Probably an experiment to see just what descent does occur, if any, with signals. I think in any case, irrespective of what we might end up doing, people should transmit the minimum power necessary for a contact to take place. So stations over here in the east, the ones that are very close, like myself and Richard and Stephen, I think as well, and probably Mark. There's a few of us here that are not that far from the repeater. We would need, we're probably still, we are doing that in fact, but to reinforce that, you know, just to use the absolute minimum amount of power would be a good thing, even given that we're down at 1200 megs. An option might be to put 1287 and 1278 east and 1245, 1253, the new ones west. That's another option, given that people over here run very low power. My gut feeling is that we probably should migrate, but let's maybe do some experiments in terms of 1245 and 1253 in terms of you know, whether they could operate as the two channels for RTV. Anyway, the whole thing is up for debate and input. That's what it's there for. And basically the rationale is to move off Galileo, and that means below 1260 megs. So the band plan's been organised in that way, and you can see the red experimentals saying, well, okay, you can still operate there, and if you wish, but the advice would be to use absolute minimum power that is necessary and only point to point. I am a member of the Technical Advisory Committee, and I put forward that we shouldn't have any repeaters on 23 centimetres at all. But practically, that's not possible. The current users of repeaters wouldn't accept that, I suspect, and you can understand that, I guess. But some other arrangements are being made for them as well. And of course, it was a repeater in the northern hemisphere, and that lowered the boom on a whole lot of us. So there was certainly an argument to modify 23 centimetre repeaters outputs. We were never going to have an output TV on 23 cms. When you go above 23 cms in this band plan, you'll find that Avatar TV is very, very well accommodated, and I would recommend that you download the document and have a look at it yourself and see what I'm talking about. The fact that above 23 cms we've got a lot of channels, so that's very good. So look, that's about it from this end. If you've got any suggestions, read the document and certainly provide input to the WA on this. It's a very important document, and I think you can see just from the brief glimpse that we've had a look at it, it covers the whole lot, right from very low frequencies to very high frequencies. So the amount of work that's been done is significant, and the issues there that had to be dealt with is also very significant. Being just interested in 70 cms above, I didn't really have any input to the HF parts of it. Okay, so I think we're over to Stephen, and we'll get an update from him. And to you, Stephen, for your efforts with the AT-Tiny software. That's fabulous. Okay, this is VK3BFG, and over to you there, Stephen.
Hello all. Yes, that was my fault. I moved the buttons around on my Stream Deck and turned my whole RF path off instead of just my amp. So I just had to wait for everything to come back up again. So I'm Stephen, VK3RTV from down in Keysborough. A few little updates and bits and pieces for tonight. So thanks, Peter. I am going to do a bit of an update on the GT Media stuff, so I'll cover that in a second. But as for the band plan, I do think that maybe the official 2 channels head over west, again, like you're thinking with a higher power output. It's probably better off using those for that side and using the experimental side over east where we can do some lower power. That does seem to make sense. But let's see how it goes and see what other people think of as well. So that will be interesting to see how we go, and yeah, make sure everyone gets updated on the testing. If we're going to change frequencies, just give everyone some time to make the relevant changes to their rigs. That would be good. All right, the GT Media update. Let's jump into a couple of pictures. So I actually purchased another V7 that arrived a couple of weeks ago. So I've actually done a new mod to that one and actually added, as you can see here, there's 3 LEDs, which I'll show you another picture of the front too, to show channel output as well. And I've just hot glued everything in, nice and simple, so anyone could chuck this mod into a V7. And the little blue LED you can see there, just to the left of the brown board, that's the COS LED. So yeah, using all 8 pins on that little at tiny now, it's doing everything it can. And that's the 3 lights in the front. So we've got power, ground, obviously the 2 signal lights, clock and data, the COS light, and I've got 3 channel lights on this one at the moment. The 3rd channel light we could do something else with if we wanted to, but like with Peter, if we're changing frequencies and things like that, we may temporarily want a 3rd channel maybe, just while we're experimenting with things. So for me it's good to have the 3 lights on there, just to make sure. Have I skipped a picture? No, I haven't. That's all. That's the 3 of those. I just wanted to show, this is on the oscilloscope, what it actually looks like. So they're all the data bytes. The first one with the address 24 just seems to be always 41 as the hex value. That doesn't seem to change. And the 34, 35, 36 and 37 addresses are the 4 digits on the front of the GT Media. And what I've actually worked out, I wasn't looking at the channel numbers last time I was playing with this, but the last one, address 37, the 4th least significant digit, the highest bit is the COS light. So you've literally got the 7 segment display with the highest bit being the COS light. So all you need to do is decode that very last digit, and you've got channel and COS. And yeah, I didn't realize that when I was playing around with it last time. So I've updated my blog, and this is just me playing with it on a breadboard. I chucked the chip on there, and you can see I'm changing channels. So it senses 1, 2, 3, and this was 4. This had no COS light. This was just doing channel sensing at this stage. And if you choose other channels, it doesn't show up. But because we're only looking at that last number light, you can see when we're on 11, 12, 13, it still lights up the 1, 2, 3 lights. Not a problem for us because we've only got 3 channels or 2 or 3 channels programmed in. But just something to be aware of. In the future, there's a what's called Tiny Wire is the library we're using on this one. And if I can actually pull that whole library apart, I might be able to rewrite the bit and actually pull all 4 digits off, which would allow us to have a serial output, or actually make sure it is definitely 0001 before it lights channel 1, for example. So just giving some more options and flexibility. There's also the potential, this is obviously the little 8-pin at tinies. There's bigger at tinies you can get as well, or any other Arduino chip really. That we could move this to something bigger, and like Peter was suggesting, if we can chuck infrared and stuff into one chip, definitely a possibility in the future. But at the same time, having a couple of chips, one that does the channel and the COS light, and another one that does the IR, there's not really a big concern about that one. Obviously, Peter, you've got an existing circuit that works, so don't don't make changes to things that are already working, sort of thing, on that one. Yeah, that's just a quick update for everyone on that one. So for Peter, I've just got to reprogram those chips with some new code. For anyone else, I have updated my blog, so you can go there, grab some new code, and go and program your own @tiny85, or it'll actually fit on a 45. I don't think it'll quite fit on that tiny 25, but they're like 10 cents difference if you go and buy them. So you just go for the 85, so it's got plenty of storage to put programming in. Yes, you could just update the code on that one. I've updated the all the addresses and the 7-segment mapping and everything on that one, so all the information's on there. There's also the data sheet off that board. So the board that you saw, let me just go back and grab the photo. That brown board at the front that's faulty, the chip that's actually faulty on that one, I've actually got the full data sheet from the manufacturer on that one on my blog as well. So you can actually see all the function it does, because it does have keyboard input and things like that as well. So there's potential to do other funky things with this on that one. But I don't think we really need to probably care about that one. Using infrared's enough to get input into the box. And you know, we've pretty much got all the functionality that we need. So yeah, that's probably it. The main difference I've done, obviously, with this new version as well, because I'm sensing the channel numbers on the front, I've actually made the COS light. The COS light will not come on unless a channel is selected. So if it's booting, it says the word boot and then load, and then it comes up with the channel number when it's ready to actually decode a real channel. So the COS light will be forced off during that boot up process, which is good. And if you go into the menu on it, that'll also turn it off. Won't obviously, if you just push info, it leaves the channel number up on the front. But yeah, if you actually go into menu to change settings, it turns COS off. So if you're making changes, it's not going to trigger as well, which is good. So it is actually a genuine COS light. When the menu's up, you're not seeing any picture from being received anyway. So to me, that's sort of a valid output as well. But yes, does all that one. There's no delay because I'm actually sensing the channel number. COS light is just, if there's a channel number up there, then it's enabled. That then when there's a signal received, it'll come on. Does all its funky stuff. If the actual receiver crashes, I've got a timeout of 3 seconds. The COS light will just force off if it doesn't receive the data stream coming from the set-top box still as well. So that all seems to be working quite well, which is good. So yeah, they a quick one. I want to go back to this picture still. Just the last bit to close that one off. When we notice this front board failing, just if anyone else has got these V7 decoders out there as well, the 5-volt rail, the VCC, you can see there, has actually had almost a volt of ripple. It was at 920, 960 millivolts of ripple, which is 20% of the 5 volts, so quite bad. If you see that stuff sort of starting to happen, it should be very, very low ripple. It's possible that this front board on your decoder is failing as well. My old boards of receivers I received like 12, 18 months ago don't seem to have this issue, but obviously these new boards, there's probably a manufacturing fault in that chip that's on them, and they do seem to be having a problem. So just if anyone's ordered a V7 recently, do just keep an eye on that one, because yeah, if that dies, it looks like, according to Peter, it just totally kills the receiver. That VCC line obviously gets pulled too low and it doesn't boot up properly. So something just to watch out on that one. Looks like some sort of manufacturing thing going on there. So all right, that's the GT Media bits and pieces. My next little update is I've been working on some Christmas lighting, and I normally have lighting in my letterbox and been wondering why it hasn't been working recently. Actually had a dead pixel. So these are addressable pixels that I have, so you can change the colors on each individual LED. So each one of those little white, so there's 3 in that photo there, each one of those has red, green and blue chips on it, that you can actually control sending clock and data out to it. And for whatever reason, that one had a really bad time, and it wasn't forwarding the signal onto the next LED, and the other 109 or so in the sequence were all just being forced off. They weren't receiving the signal, so had to cut that one out and repair that one. But these have been in my letterbox about 7 years in all the heat and everything like that, so to be the only fault in 7 years, I still think that's a pretty good deal. They've held up to a lot of stuff. and this is my new project. Again, lighting based, looking at some extra Christmas garden lighting, and I've run out of time this year to look at it in too much detail. But built up these boxes. In the bottom layer underneath, you can't sort of see it there, is a 200 watt 12 volt power supply, obviously a fuse block, and these are what's called WLED controllers. These control lights similar to the addressable lights I just showed you, and I've got some Christmas trees and things out the front which I can actually chuck a video up on. So if I just play that video now, these have all sorts of special effects and everything in them. So that's all built into a waterproof enclosure you can chuck out in your yard, and next year I'll make it a bit more special, but there's just some good effects and things on these for this year. So that's kind of cool. I like that. I might be making some more of these. I actually found these off a guy that has a YouTube channel, and was selling these kits, and it's gave me the little bit of motivation I needed to actually do some more Christmas lights this year. So I think that's going to be the limit. I might have a couple of candy canes I'm working on, but yeah, do a bit more Christmas light electronics as well, and they're using Wi-Fi, so there's a little bit of RF involved, I suppose, to give it a little bit of a relevance to amateur radio. Not much, but yeah, a little bit. That's if I just flick back, that's just another photo. So on the top it's actually got a network switch as well. Not using that this year, I'm just using the Wi-Fi. Once you need to coordinate all your lights together, using Ethernet, just because of the latency and packet drops you get on Wi-Fi, it's too much when you're trying to coordinate all your lights together. So that'll be used for next year now, but yeah, that's all in an IP68 container, which is like $12 from Bunnings for a 12 litre container. Nice and cheap, but that's, yeah, I've been working on that one a fair bit recently. This next one, this is my last little project of what I've been working on, network updates at home. So I used to use these cable managers. It's just like a brushed panel to hide all the length of patch cables going to my switch. So that's what it used to look like, 1/2 meter patch cables. They're all obviously too long, the wrong length and everything like that. So I actually decided to buy some specific cables of a better length and remove all the patch management that I had. I've always been taught to use patch management, cable management, everything like that. But when you actually see this result, you'll go, maybe I shouldn't use patch management. Just get cables that are the right length. Looks much neater. It's almost like a before and after. I made the before picture look horrible, and the after picture is much more colourful and nice. That wasn't on purpose, that's just the only picture I had. As always, I've worked on a project and forgot to take a before photo. But yes, actually got cables of the correct length and everything like that. It looks much neater, easier to manage, particularly with a big switch like that. So yeah, that's what I've been working on. Probably my last update is everyone last week and the week before was talking lots about microphones. So I haven't changed microphones in a while. I bought this probably 18 months ago. And hopefully you can hear me because it's directional. I use one of these ones. It's a Rode NT USB. So it just sits on my desk and it's USB connected to the computer. So I don't have to worry about audio cables and things like that. Using vMix just makes it very easy. Just sense it as a microphone and we're all done. So I'm hoping the audio quality and everything of this is pretty good because it's a semi-professional mic. But yes, it's not quite as flexible because you've got to have it plugged in on a USB cable. But I can just sit it on the desk in front of me and it works quite well. So I think that's it for me. I think it'll be back over to you, Ian, now. I will put up the change to RTV2 little logo, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much. Hopefully that was a good little update. And Peter, I don't know when I will be up to your place just yet to drop off a couple of new chips, but I will keep you updated, hopefully not too distant future. Let's get that receiver working. So, all right, all good. That's me. Over back to you, Ian, on RTV2.
Great, thanks Stephen. Very comprehensive segment that was great, and the great work on the GT Media set-top box and the COS. Yes, lights extracting, so that's great work, and thanks for your blog too, very interesting. I do recommend people go and look up that blog. And also what was mentioned actually via 2 meters, and obviously a follow on from Peter's segment on the band plan, which is thanks for covering the critical area for us in the ATV space. And it's important to note that the band plan hasn't actually been changed in the last 10 years at least. It's been almost a decade since the last attempt to carry out a comprehensive review of it. So, and a lot of things happened in 10 years, as we are aware. Mostly made to the 30 metre and 2 metre and 70 centimetre band, but also mentioned the 23 centimetre proposals. All right, now what I have just knocked together rather quickly is a slide. I just got to remember where I put it. Let's see if this works. Yes, we seem to have that slide up. So Hayden, who has a great YouTube channel, has done an interview with one of the, I believe he's one of the people that have been working on this proposal for the Wireless Institute of Australia for reviewing the band plan. He's done a new segment at the top there. You can see the title, New VK Band Plan. So if you search, either go to Hayden's YouTube channel. It's an interview with the chair of the committee. Great, thanks for that. What was I going to say? That the YouTube channel is called Ham Radio DX, and the video is there. Yeah, it's about 17 minutes in, I believe, is the time section for the 23 centimetre proposal and discussion that ensued about that. I don't think there's anything else I can really add, having not seen it. It was only posted yesterday, so yeah, it's hot off the press. So we're about 2 weeks in on the timeline for comments, and time is ticking on for just over a week to go. So be good to get people's feedback, even if you're happy with what's been proposed. It'd be good to say so, and if you've got any comments, by also feed it in. All right, I think I might do. Yes, comes back to me, and I have audio. Oh, amazing technology when it works. The next cab off the rank is John ATV, so you might like to get ready, but before we cut across to John, I might just touch on what's the weather going to be for Melbourne. Why do I keep losing audio? I do not like that happening. But anyway, we're into late spring, very late spring, and in fact early September if you in early summer if you follow the calendar demarcation. But the weather changes very quickly in Melbourne. We had rather cool weather. I think it was a high of 16 today in that area, and and yesterday was a lot of rain. And tomorrow it's going to be sunny, and the day after that is windy and 33. Must be a north wind, I would guess, from that temperature. And then Friday it comes down again, and so on. But what does that present as far as the tropo? Well, so we have the tropo predictions there. So some rather interesting in later this week. Effects into Tasmania and South Australia, between Victoria and across to New Zealand, in fact, heading into the weekend. So some ducting opportunities possible there.
Did you know that a video edition of the WIA news broadcast is screened here, VK3RTV Channel 1 by Clint VK3CSJ, every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m, repeated Sunday evening at 8 p.m.
Someone pointed out to me my audio goes all over the place. I've got a new setup, and it defaults the audio for all the clips, and it's defaulting it too high compared with my studio volume. So I've either got to adjust the studio volume, or I've got to adjust the defaulting. But all very interesting. All right, John, so if you're ready, we might, people with set-top boxes won't need to change channel, but we can now, I shall drop carrier on the K and hand it over to you, John, VK3RTV. And then if, John, you can pass it on to Mick, VK3CH.
Good evening, everyone. John, VK3RTV in Williamstown. Using a different camera tonight, one of the older cameras. And what I'm going to show you, other than my new hat for the mode, I will show you some old stuff. I know we've been talking about new receivers, etc. tonight, which is fantastic. Peter and Stephen have done some amazing work there, so that's really good. That helps us all. The first thing I wanted to show was I've got some old articles from Amateur Radio Action magazine, if anybody remembers that. There was an amateur television series in that for a couple of years, mainly produced by Ron Harrison, and I found an article that talks about when VK3RTV was first put up. So I'll just change screens to that. Make sure I've still got audio. Yes, I have. So you can see there that's from about 1980, I think the article is, and I think the repeater was up for a little while before that. But you can see from the article that there's a person who's quite prominent in the development of that equipment, and that's our very own Peter Cossins, VK3BFG, who's mentioned several times in the in the article. In fact, as you go through it, it talks about Peter not only being the custodian of the repeater back in 1980, which was 45 years ago, and in fact is still doing that very job. There's a little bit more about Peter. Ron talks about the original Jenkins-Cossins repeater. So there's obviously been a few iterations over the years. And if you have a look at the complexity of it, it provides a block diagram of just the receive system. So you can imagine most of this was hand built. There probably wasn't a lot of commercial equipment available at the time, so this would have all been hand built from this block diagram, just for the receiver. The next block diagram talks about the video processing board, and I'm sure Peter's got some stories as to what kind of early technology he used for video processing. And there's a photo of some of the equipment, and then the block diagram for the transmit system. So yeah, look, quite a lot of work would have gone into producing that repeater. So interesting looking at some of the other articles that I've found. There were quite a lot of ATVers, not just in Melbourne, but in South Australia, Tasmania, and in particular Queensland had quite a number of ATVers, which sadly a lot of those have disappeared. The other thing I wanted to show tonight, on a similar vein, I will come back to a different camera. In another magazine I found an article by Peter Cossins about the 640 junk box amplifier for 6 meters, and interesting article. In fact, I didn't completely build this one myself, but somebody else started it. But I have one of these in the shed. I'm not being used at the moment, unfortunately, but I did use it on 6 meters probably 10 years ago or so. In fact, it might have been 20 years ago. And it's still, I've still got that, and it's still an operational unit. There's a bit of a look at the simplicity of that amplifier, and it works quite well, providing 100 watts. In fact, I have a 2 meter version of that as well, using the 640 tube. So yeah, interesting. Peter, you've obviously done a lot over the years, not just on ATV. And I might pull out that amplifier and see if it still works. So and before I get comments about the shading that the cap does on camera, I'm facing normally facing the other way, which is where my studio lighting is behind me. So that's why there's no lighting on my face tonight. So yes, I will have a good read of the WIA band plan. I think it makes sense to go down to the 2 channels. We've been quite fortunate to have 4 channels available, but I'm sure we can survive with the 2 channels and not cause an international incident, perhaps, causing any interference with an international satellite constellation. I think there's also room. I'm not sure whether Peter was indicating that, but the experimental sections, of course, we can possibly use for narrowband ATV. I'm not sure whether we can do that, but that's probably another discussion. Simplex narrowband. That's all I've got tonight. Thanks everyone for coming up and watching, and yeah, some fascinating stuff happening in the workshops of Peter and Stephen. So that's I'll look forward to seeing the progress on that. That's fantastic. All right, I'll put my thanks for watching on. Short and sweet one tonight, and it'll be Mick VK3CH will take it up. So Mick, if you're on DVB-T, I'm on T, so it should be a fairly quick changeover. So thanks everyone, and we'll hopefully see you next week.
Wow, that was quick. There you go. All right, we'll just lower that one down a bit. Good day, everyone. Mick VK3CH from Doncaster. Well, quite a lot on tonight, and the main focus seems to be the band plan. So from my notes, well, Peter, all the hats you wear and the knowledge and experience you have, I'm pretty sure you could almost say, take a poll. Who wants me to be your advocate on behalf of the users of the Melbourne ATV group? And I think you'd probably almost get a standard consensus on that. And yeah, probably what you would write in reply to the WIA band plan would probably be taken with quite a lot of respect and attention. So there you go, just my 2 cents. Yeah, Rod VK3IE also did send out an email just half an hour ago or an hour ago, just before the net started. Oh, it's over an hour ago now. Yeah, on a similar topic, and the YouTube video and the interview between Hayden and whoever the other guy was, discussing that very matter. So the Melbourne Microwave Group will be privy to pretty much what's been discussed on the net tonight in that regard. Yep, well there you go. Yeah, that's the link that Rob sent out. Now, the very fact that I'm still getting into the repeater, quite okay. The house next door has, well, they're not finished, there's 2 of them. 2 stories have been built. The what do you call it, the black roofing tiles are on, and they've been spray painted. There's still the protective scaffolding all around it with the metal pipes on. and I noticed today they're putting in the you know, the big, about that size, the air conditioning duct type tubes, and that would be all metal and reflecting. So if anything was going to hijack my signal, I think it would have done it by now. Putting some bricks up isn't really going to matter. RF goes through bricks, so I'm probably pretty safe, I think. I could safely say. Okay, what else have we got? With the moving of the band plans.
9 p.m.
Oh, that's the All-Star announcing the time. With moving channels, not sure. Of course, some of my amplifiers are peaked for the frequencies that I'm on. I suppose with some capacitor changes or, you know, a bit of tuning, that could be altered. So no, we could get around to that. So I pushed the wrong button there. There we go. So yeah, a job for Ron. We'll see what happens with the band plan. And interesting to say that the comments from Ian that nothing had changed in the last 10 years. But yes, certainly technology has. So it's inevitable that we're going to get a tap on the shoulder, but hopefully not a push in the back. So yeah, according to Peter, yeah, if we sort of preempt it and make changes so that we're probably already aligned into where they want us to be or desire us to be, that's probably the best way to go about it. Alright, that's about all I've really got for this week, so I'll hand it back to Ian. So cheers all from Mick. Catch us later.
Great, thanks John and Mick for those sections, and just increase my volume a little bit. All right, so what else was good? Oh, say hello to Vince Vince on YouTube channel. Richard's VK3VRS. Richard is the name of the YouTube channel, which is streaming our net live, and that recording will be available post the net. And there's 15 watching, so yeah, it's a good turn up. What else? And also Steve. Right. Steve is come up on YouTube too. All right. It also is going out on Discord, but there's no recording associated with Discord, just a live stream. That's about it. I might perhaps. I've been doing a catch-up on quizzes, production of quizzes, I should say. So I've produced another 30 what I'm calling advanced banks of questions. So they'll be shown over the next 12 months. And I've sort of been progressively automating it a bit more, the production of those. There's been a few sort of manual processes that I've been working through over the last 4 years that I've been using those, producing those quizzes, and so that's taken a bit of time to work through some of the issues there with automating even more the production of those quizzes. All right, what else was I going to say? What we might look at is, this is the calendar of events for January, February next year. I even got the year right. That's amazing. Way ahead of myself here. And the summer UHF plus up to microwave field day is on Saturday the 17th, 18th in the VK domain, and the Ballarat Amateur Radio Festival, always a very big rural city festival, and that's at Ballarat Airport as usual, so things to look forward to, and I assume that there'll be a few more postings over the summer break for more festivals in the start of or for March, April, May next year. Now I've got to work out where I'm going. I'm back. So I thought that there would be some other information after that. Let's go for one of the more advanced questions. We haven't. I don't think we've had those for a while. Perhaps we had them last week. I can't remember. Anyway, here's one of the advanced quizzes. 3 questions. Hope you got your thinking caps on. This digital TV repeater tour takes us south of Melbourne to Tasmania, Australia's enchanting island state gateway to the Antarctic. In the north of the state, Tony VK3RTV digital ATV transmitter in Ulverstone comes alive most weeknights from 7 p.m. and again on weekend mornings, all viewable on the BATC streamer and whereby. Down south, don't miss the weekly digital amateur television experimenters gathering, broadcast every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. on VK7OTC. This is live streamed on the Reese Hobart YouTube channel. Past editions also available on the YouTube channel. Before we wrap up, let's take a look at the 5-day weather outlook for Hobart, Tasmania's charming capital city. Right, just updating the run sheet because there's a slight change there. All right, so that's good. I hope you enjoyed those. I thought the last one was a bit easy, so they weren't all hard. Or what else was I going to say? That's about it, I think. So I'll sign off. Thanks for guys. You're coming up and presenting on the net. It always makes it easy when there's more people coming up on the net. It makes the job of net controller easier. So hope to catch you next week, and do play safe and learn more about your hobby. It's all good fun. All right, let's sign off for this evening, and thanks for your interest in watching.
Program was, see if I can work out a program that works. Anyway, this is VK3RTV.
VK3CH, yes, good evening all. And I forgot to mention the
Let's take a look at 2 metres. 2 metres we're not proposing to touch very much. For reasons, it's already complicated enough as it is. And really the only change we're proposing for 2 metres at this time is to simply shift our block D and E, or sorry, tighten up the circumstances that the block D and E repeater pairs can be allocated. You might wonder, why do we even have them? The reason that there's 1.6 megahertz offset repeater pairs in the Australian band plan is, unfortunately, we have a problem with one of our spectrum neighbours. The ACMA for the VHF land mobile commercial service hasn't considered the amateur service very well in terms of intermodulation and mixing. And so when you get on some of these big community sites, as is often the case, and particularly Victoria suffers a lot from this, but it's in the other states as well, they have a lot of commercial land mobile services. And unfortunately what they've done is they've allowed 2 transmitters to be spaced 600 kilohertz apart in the commercial service. As soon as you've done that and mix it with an amateur transmitter on the same site, you generate spurious emissions internally, and it can come off a rusty bolt or all sorts of things on a site. It can be almost impossible to find, but what you do is you generate a 600 kilohertz offset birdie. And if you're a 600 kilohertz offset receiver, that birdie lands right amongst your own receiver. And you can actually lock your own repeater up by virtue of the noise you generate. So we created the 1.6 splits for the sites where that is an intractable problem. But what we've started to notice is that some people are electing to request 1.6 megahertz split offsets, and there's no commercial operator on site. You might think, well, why can't they? Why should they be allowed to do that? Well, it does make repeaters cheaper to build. Yep, I'll acknowledge that. The problem is that it actually consumes a lot of channels. So if I put one block D repeater in, I can't then use the equivalent block B frequency at the top. That same block D repeater also means I can't use the equivalent block C repeater down the bottom. So that one block D and E allocation blocks 2 other repeaters from being deployed in an area. We just don't have the channel space to do that for every single repeater. So we're actually proposing to restrict the block D and E pairs to only get used where you've got a proven commercial problem with an intermodulation product that you can't solve. And at that point, sure, let's do it. makes absolutely perfect sense. We may still consider it for some of the portable repeaters, because making a portable repeater lighter and cheaper to deploy, probably also a good thing for 1.6. But every other use, we're recommending no. Put the work in, put a 600 kilohertz offset repeater in like we've done for the last 50 years. They work, they're not that hard. There's hundreds of them around the country, so you can't tell me that it's too hard. But it means that we can better use our spectrum. We don't have enough of it. In fact, I noticed around Sydney and Melbourne, it's getting very hard to pick 2-metre repeater channels. If somebody wants to put a new one in, even in Adelaide, it's getting hard to pick 2-metre repeater channels. So this is something to consider, is our spectral efficiency, how we're doing it. So that's 2 metres. That's probably all from VHF. Again, I don't know if there's any questions on that one so far, Hayden.
No, just I think a general comment on the layouts and talking about how a single page band plan to print and laminate would be good. It's hard when there's so much detail, especially like on 2 metres. There's a lot of detail in there, but all of this will be in the document.
My view is that we should be able to come up with something that's 1 page for HF, probably 1 page for VHF, UHF up to maybe, if we're lucky, 10 gigs. And there's probably going to be a 3rd page for the millimetre bands. We are looking at, can we come up with some artwork that leaves things at a size that people can read,
but doesn't get too confusing.
But doesn't get too confusing.
Yeah.
It doesn't lose its detail. So look, it's an idea we certainly want to look at. All right, let's take a look at the UHF bands, and this is where life's going to get a little exciting. 70 centimetres, first of all. There's a few changes on 70 centimetres. Fortunately, none of them are too drastic, but the main ones I'll just take you through. So there's several proposals we've made for the band. Hang on, I'm just going to pull up my reminder notes here to make sure I cover them all. So the first thing we're looking to do with 70 centimetres, I'm pretty sure I've got a picture of the band plan here, so I'll put that up. The first thing we're talking about doing with 70 centimetres is simply discontinuing some of the old repeater offsets. So people will know that many repeaters in the early days were 5 megahertz offset. Then we had 5.4 megahertz offset. Then we've got 7 megahertz offset. They're all still in use. They're all still mixed together. It does make it inefficient to use the spectrum at times. And so we've got to the point where the general feedback we've had from people that are using 7 megahertz offset is that it's actually very effective. And we're very keen to maybe standardize it back to 7 megs only. It does fit the Australian band plan pretty well with only having the 20 megahertz. We still would have a limited number of 5 megahertz channels available for those who really want to use it. And in some cases, when you're trying to plan multi-repeater sites, if you're running 3 repeaters on a site for 3 different modes, sometimes you might need that option. So we're not going to take it out completely, but we are proposing to restrict it. The other thing we're looking to do here is increase the size of the repeater band a little bit. We took a lot of it away when the first 7 meg changes were made. What would it have been, 2016, 2017, I think they came through the first time. We're looking just to return to 439.6 to 439.8 back into repeater service again. Again, looking for enough room here so that those operators that have talked to us about wanting to multi-couple multiple repeaters together onto one set of antennas, and like you might want to have an analog repeater and a fusion repeater and a DMR repeater all co-located together, you can do it, provided you've got the right spectrum to put them all in. And so doing this will help that. So that was one of the other things that we're looking at. So that's the discontinuing. Then that's the other really big thing, I guess, for the band that we'll call out is what we're doing up here above 441. So the 70 centimetre band was always a bit of the poor cousin for having dedicated channels for digital hotspots. And by hotspots, I'm talking about people who want to run them for DMR or for Fusion or for D-Star or even for Echolink or whatever. Those little low-powered things you put on your shelf, and then you can use your DMR handheld to connect to your hotspot. Your hotspot can then link you through the internet to amateurs on distant repeaters or distant hotspots. It's a very popular activity these days. So we've had a couple of people ask questions about, well, where in the band do we put them? So we're looking to actually make this much more obvious. Setting aside 441 to 441.5, originally we'd considered it as a simplex idea. We've actually had some questions come back, well, can I use a duplex as well? And in fact, if you look at it, we may actually change the proposal yet. And again, I'll be interested in people's feedback. To make it 441 to 441.5, that could be either simplex or it could be 7 meg offset, which means you're going to have the inputs to that hotspot band on 434 to 434.5. Now, 434 to 434.5 is in the lipid band. So the low interference potential devices, the scourge of the garage door opener that the ACMA let into our spectrum 20 years ago, well, let's just fill it up with hotspots. Nice local communications. You've got the signal to noise to overcome the local garage door opener or the local pair of wireless headphones. And you could actually quite happily build a duplex hotspot following the 7 meg split plan. So that's probably something we'll consider. But again, we're really interested in people's feedback. Is that a good spot on the band for it? Is 500 kilohertz enough? Is it too much? Is it not enough? Let us know. The whole point about this is an exploration of people's thoughts of how do we better use the amateur bands that we've got. We've also had another proposal that's come in, this one particularly from the DMR community. They wanted us to look at actually setting aside particular pairs of repeater channels nationwide just for DMR. And then I had a request for another group who wanted to do the same thing for Fusion. And it's all of a sudden, okay, well, if I put 3 channels for DMR, first of all, can I find 3 common channels nationally? Actually, I couldn't. I tried. But then if I have DMR want that, and then Fusion wants it, and then D-Star wants this, and then FreeDV wants it, and then M17 wants it, all of a sudden I'm going to have 20 channels lined up for people to have dedicated services on. A, 3 channels might not be enough in a market, but B, it's now creating spectrum denial. I don't agree with it, but I'm quite happy to put it up as a proposal and ask members' opinions or ask the amateur community's opinions. Should we actually set aside dedicated repeater pairs for particular uses? My view is the channel plans have been set up for a 12.5 kilohertz channel spacing that accommodates any modulation, whether it's P25, D-Star, Fusion, voice, analog, 25 kilohertz analog, 12.5 kilohertz analog, whatever you want. The current channels let you do anything. That flexibility can then be used to mix and multiplex anything you like onto anything. It gives the maximum capability of our spectrum. I think locking things down is not a good idea.
Yeah, multi-mode repeaters and hotspots, that can get confusing then if you run them on one frequency and then you think it's something else. It's just too confusing. So
I think it's worth keeping them separate. I think having the ability to keep them separate is a good thing. But again, this is a consultation, so we've been asked. We've put the question to the public. Let's see. The final things on 70 centimeters. That was about it. So. I will make one comment. There's one situation where naming dedicated channels we think is worth doing. We do have a small subset of Australia-wide channels that are used for a bunch of WISN portable repeaters or emergency portable repeaters. It doesn't have to just be for WISN. Those channels we have tried to set up Australia-wide channels and say, well, that's the Australia-wide emergency portable repeater channel. And we have about 4 of them on 70 centimeters. We actually have a couple on 2 meters as well. The nature of an Australia-wide license is quite specific, and it means you can have one license that doesn't get tied to a site, and you can run it for 7 days anywhere in the country, provided you're not causing interference. We want to support that because we honestly think that having portable kit that can be moved around to support emergency communications is a really important capability to maintain. So that's the one exception that we would make to the let's not have dedicated channels rule. That's 70 centimeters. Before I go on to 23 centimeters, are there any questions about 70? If you do, just stick them in the chat.
Yeah, I don't think there was. The only thing was there was a question someone said about DV modes, but we covered that earlier on in saying that they are covered in the voice portion of the band, not the data portion of the band.
So on HF, yes. When we come to 70 centimeters and 2 meters, we actually do have data segments that probably break that mold, because we actually are encouraging people to have data or digital voice in the data and digital voice subbands, at least on simplex. For the repeater channels, they're mixed and shared, but we do have dedicated subbands for it. Now we have a look on 2 meters briefly again. We've got this band down here, 144.7 to 144.875. That's for digital data, but it could also be for simplex hotspots. It could be for simplex high-powered digital communications. Likewise, we've got a couple of those channels up on 147, 5625 and 6125. They're there for the same reason. 70 centimeters, we've done the same thing again. We're planning a specific digital hotspot band for digital voice. For data operation, really it's experimental sections, or there are some data channels hiding in the data subband as well. If people think that needs better clarity, more than happy to hear from you. Let's talk about it. Let's see what we can do to improve it. 23 centimeters. This is the one that triggered the initial review. And this is a product, and I'm going to be a bit careful here how I try to describe this, because I need people to understand the journey that the amateur service has been on. First of all and foremost, people need to recognise the amateur service on 23 centimetres is a secondary service. We're secondary to satellite radio navigation. So activity that the amateurs put on that band that interferes with radio navigation, and by that I'm basically meaning receivers or things like GPS receivers or GPS-like network receivers, we are causing genuine interference to that service if we're not careful. What ended up happening in the late 2020s was that there was a couple of these, there was a couple of amateur transmitters in Europe, as I've been told the story. One was an ATV repeater. In fact, I believe both might have been ATV repeaters, although somebody tried to tell me the other day that one of them was actually a voice repeater. Unfortunately, they were very close to the European Space Agency's Galileo navigation service operation centres, and they were interfering with the Galileo signal. That triggered a whole raft of activity through the International Telecommunications Union, the end result of which was they were under the direction not to kick the amateur service out of the band, but to find what coordination requirements could be put in place so that the amateur service didn't interfere with the band. And that is where we have a problem today. Following the complaints, what's actually been written up and finally signed into law through here, even here in Australia, this started in Region 1, but what's actually happened is an ITU footnote has now been put into the spectrum plan that describes for all regulators how they are to deal with amateur service interference complaints. If the radio navigation service receives interference from the amateurs and they complain to the regulator has now got a storyboard that says this is what we will do to the spectrum. The outcome, if they actually trigger this, is not good for us. Not at all. Vast tracts of the 23 centimetre band, we will be forced to run no more than 20 milliwatts effective radiated power. So that's 20 milliwatts after antenna gain, not input power. That makes that piece of the spectrum almost unusable. The IARU, through a lot of work, has done a lot of good work to preserve several segments. So we've managed to get an outcome where we can run some power above 1296 megahertz, and the limit there is about 50 watts. You go above 1298 megahertz, and we can run 100, I won't quote the number, it's somewhere above 100 watts. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head. It's in the paper. And with special conditions, you can run moon bounce up to about 500 watts with a permit above 1299, provided your dish is elevated at so many degrees above the ground. So look, we've managed to preserve weak signal and moon bounce. We've managed to preserve access to the amateur satellite service if there is ever an amateur satellite that wants to uplink on that band. We've managed to preserve some spectrum for amateur television, but it will be narrowband fast-scan ATV between 1256 and 1258, so it's 2 megahertz wide. this is what could be triggered if we cause interference. And this is the big thing. This is what could happen if we cause it, if we give them reason to do it. So that's presented quite the challenge for us. What do we do? What do we as the amateur service do? Our committee has talked with the Region 1 people. We've talked with various activity groups on 23 centimetres around the country, and I apologise if we haven't been able to talk to your particular group. Look, there's actually quite a few of them, so we've talked to some people to get an idea. We're making some recommendations, and the aim of this is to try to take out of the picture the most likely harmful interference processes that you can create. And so the first thing we settled on was, let's actually no longer encourage ATV repeaters to use the spectrum, particularly above 1260, for downlinks. In fact, we're saying don't use ATV repeaters on the band for downlink transmissions at all. So repeater to users, don't use this band as a TV repeater output. It was a TV repeater that triggered most of the problems in Europe. You know, people, when they get on ATV, you're a long duration transmission. You generally might have a bit of power behind it. The probability is that ATV is going to be probably one of the more harmful things you could do. So our suggestion is going to be use the band for ATV uplinks into repeaters, use it for simplex point-to-point activity. An individual user is not going to be transmitting as much as a repeater will. An individual user will have a directional antenna. The individual users also can operate by running as little power as they need to access the repeater, and it'll be up to turn the power down until it starts to break up, and then just turn it up a little bit. Run the minimum power that you need is the recommendations we're going to make. But the main one here is let's not do any more ATV repeater downlinks on the band. One of the things we have some hope of preserving, if they did actually decide to implement this in Australia, is that the actual satellite signals we're interfering with is above 1260 megahertz is Galileo. So that's the European equivalent of GPS. That is a band we do expect to have people wanting to protect. We like what the outcome was in Europe, where CEPT has actually ruled they're going to implement these changes above 1260, but they've said to ITU, well, no, we don't care about the problem below 1260, and we're going to leave the amateurs to have unfettered access below 1260 megahertz. Our view would be, look, if this got triggered in Australia, we would be lobbying for an equivalent of the CEPT outcome. So at least try to preserve wideband access to 1240 to 1260. Or 1240 to 1258 at least. And hopefully we've done enough not to actually break everything else above it. The one problematic area we have is our FM repeaters. There really isn't anywhere in the band plan left to put them. You can't run them with very narrow splits. And the problem is that the output of the repeater at the moment is actually quite close to the satellite signals. So trying to actually understand what to actually do with the repeaters was a difficult one. For now, we're recommending that we actually leave them running as they are. The theory is simply, we don't hear a lot of activity on any 23 centimetre repeater around the country. Now, if there's somebody telling me there's a really active one, let me know. I'm curious. Congratulations, by the way. But at the same time, they are narrowband. They do run moderate power, but hopefully the duty cycle is low enough that they would not create a big problem. But it's a risk. It's a risk to leave them there. Another thought was actually, well, do we reconfigure the 23 centimetre subband? We'd be a global orphan if we did, but maybe there is some scope to try. And there's a recommendation in the pack that you can see on the screen. Maybe we transmit up on 1297 for the FM downlinks, and you receive on 1272. So it means that the bulk of the interfering signal is coming from the amateur stations rather than the repeater. And maybe that'll make less of an impact. The fundamental message really is, look, we need to be a little bit more circumspect at how we use the band. We need to try to show people ways how we can reduce our level of activity while not stopping activity. We don't want to see the band become deserted. There are certainly plenty of opportunities to keep doing a lot of what we were doing. But we do ask people to now take some pause and have a thought about what are you doing on the band, and how do we actually minimise our impact. So that's what the purpose are behind some of these proposals. 23 centimetres is a challenge, as I said, and it's the one band where it's in our hands. If the amateur service doesn't take some care, we are at risk of having the worst outcome possible dropped on us. And I guess we don't want that. But it's in everyone's hands to consider how do we do that. This will be the recommendations that we've got going forward. Again, I'd love to see some feedback on how we're going about it. I will say there was a couple of comments that came in about in the actual documents, we've only actually referenced digital ATV here. One of the comments was made that what about the new ICOM 905 radio that can do FM ATV but can't do digital? Look, there is still room to do an 18 megahertz wide FM ATV channel, and I'll put that back in the band plan. It'll be centered on 1249. If you want to do FM ATV on 23 centimeters as a point-to-point individual user experiment, you can. But we would recommend that it not be used for a repeater. I will stop there. Is there any particular questions on 23 that people hopefully understand what we're proposing? Because it's a bit of a departure trying to keep using something whilst trying to minimise the amount of interference that you're creating when you don't know what you're interfering with exactly.
Not really questions. There was a couple of comments just on 23 centimetres. I think some saying, a bit of a bleak picture, but it's not. I think it's key to stress is that this is all precautionary. The changes. It's not that we've lost anything yet. It's just the potential for losing it is high. That's why we need to think about it now so that we're best prepared going forward.
I think the trick here is that if we take care of what we're doing, then there will never be a reason for the ACMA to bring those very draconian restrictions in. And we'll continue to have quiet enjoyment of the band for years to come. But it's in our hands. I think it's a very unique challenge here for the amateur services. Can we actually prove that we can respectfully operate in a secondary band and not cause interference?
And surprisingly, it's a very good band to be on. We've got, I think we counted like over 40 or something in VK7 on 23 centimetres now. And, we use it for all sorts of experimentation, digital modes, voice, FM, voice, SSB, all sorts of things, EME. So, yeah, it's really, really good fun.
It certainly is. It's a good band to play with. And I mean, you must admit, if you consider it's sort of in those primary bands where all of the cellular mobile activity goes, clearly the Spectrum's got something going for it. Otherwise, the industry wouldn't have invested in that part of the band.
All
right, let's just go through the rest of it then. I do want to raise this little